this probably has a larger lesson for all art, like people's opinion about it. It's so hard to tell the difference between when you think something is good and is it really good? And is it determined by you or by the audience or both?
Create for No Reason is your weekly dose of inspiration to create what you believe should exist in the world. It's where passion meets craft, and we explore the joy of the creative process and building a meaningful body of work. I'm so excited about this episode because I was joined by my friend Brian Carter, who is an entrepreneur. He owns a digital and social marketing agency. He is also the #1 best-selling author of multiple books, and he is a sought-after keynote speaker. He's also a comedian, an artist, a singer, a musician. He does a lot of things, which is why I'm really excited about our conversation, because we talked a lot about the creative process. We talked about how do you define success in a creative process, in a creative project, and just a lot of really great pieces of wisdom. So if you are in a state of creating something, if you're dealing with anything, if you're dealing with any of the things that we deal with in the creative process, which you are, otherwise you wouldn't be listening to this show, then you're in for a real treat, because we talk about a lot of different things that I know you're going to get some really good insight on, and some strategies that you can use to help move your idea forward. I hope you enjoy this episode. Brian, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Kate. Excited to be. I don't know, how many have you done on this podcast so far? It's pretty new.
Well, it's new, but it's not. We relaunched it. It's a relaunch.
Oh gosh. Okay.
Yeah.
Is it a rehash? Is it a redux?
It's a relaunch, Brian. It's a relaunch because we did 103 episodes, and then I took a little hiatus that was a little longer than anticipated, and then got back into it. And I decided, we got to get back into it, because it's fun conversations that I feel like people need to hear in the world about the creative process and doing more things that interest them.
Cool. I'm game.
Yeah. So the reason why I was really excited to have you come on the show is because you create a lot of art. You put a lot of art out into the world using a lot of different mediums, a lot of different formats, and you also have a business. So how do you describe to people when they say, "Hey, Brian, what do you do?" What do you say?
Mania. I don't know. That's a good question. What do you do? I'm like, well, what do you mean? So like for work, I have 2 small ad agencies. And then I do keynote speaking, which is good. We're, 2024 here, we're back up to 2019 levels post pandemic. So 25 gigs or so this year. And then what do I do other than that? I just constantly try to learn and grow, become a better person, have fun. And to me, creativity is fun. Learning is fun for me, which I think is an advantage. Like I hate that most people don't like learning, and I feel bad for them that it's not fun.
That makes me so sad to think that people don't love learning, because that's what life is.
Yeah. Well, not for some people.
I know. Well, fortunately, the people that listen to this podcast, they are lifelong learners, and they do want to become the best version of themselves. And one of the ways in which to do that is to really explore your curiosity and to learn and grow, and your creativity. And we've known each other for many, many years. We've actually created some things together.
That's true.
You run these agencies. So when I met you, you were running your businesses. And then I discovered, oh, wait, this guy does comedy. And then you started a YouTube channel, and you also do a lot of artwork, and you have a whole other Instagram on your artwork. So let's dig into some of your creative projects. First of all, what inspired you to kind of start tapping into comedy and getting into comedy and starting that channel? Because I'm so fascinated by comedians.
We are fascinating. Well, that's a good question. And in fact, the first answer I would usually give people is not probably the truth. It's taken me, because I've been doing it for 18 years and it took me a while to realize, oh, my dad heckled me my whole life. And so I learned to heckle him back. My mom always teases people in a friendly way to get to know them. I learned that from her. My grandma was ridiculously funny. And so, I talk about them in my keynotes, but I never thought I could do stand up. It was like, it's like a lot of those things you see people do it and you're like, wow, that's amazing. And you never even think, "Oh, I could do that, you know? But I was watching a Dane Cook tour video back in like 2005, and he's a controversial guy, but he had an MC named Jay somebody who was introducing all of his gigs, and that guy would get up and try and tell jokes that were completely new to an arena. Okay. And he was dying every night. And I'm like, I think I could do better than that guy. So him being horrible inspired me to try to be good. And then I just, started. Well, I dove in this. Everything I do, I dive into headlong. I read like 12 books on stand up. I wrote 100 pages of jokes. And then I'm like, I better go to an open mic before I stop doing this entirely. So I went and I did what I thought were my best 5 minutes, and about 10 or 20% of it was funny,
Oh,
which is
wow.
what Seinfeld says is true pretty much. Chris Rock says that too. So, I mean, that, but I was doing pretty well in the beginning because I dive into stuff and I over prepare and I think everything through before I do it. And I think that's why I did okay starting out.
Okay, two things. One, I love that you dive in. Two, yes, when you see a comedian, a lot of people would not even think, "Oh, I want to go up and do that." It Okay, first of all, most people don't want to get up on stage and public speak, let
Yeah.
alone now tell jokes. And what I think is so funny is when people say, "Oh, you're really funny. You should be a comedian." And I just think, "No, it doesn't work that way. It works the way that you did it. You have to write and write and write and get up on stage and tell jokes and bomb and get feedback and figure out what works." And that's why I love studying comedians, because you really have to go through the process. It's literally the only way to get that
Yeah.
tight 5, tight 10, tight 15, to get to that Netflix special.
Yeah, haven't gotten there yet, but that's because I was lucky. I got pushed into keynote speaking and doing funny keynotes, before that. And as Richard Pryor says, like he says, he was super funny because he grew up in a brothel, and I say, well, I grew up in the suburbs, so I'm not very funny, So, but I'm funny enough for business audiences, and I'm also, that's just my demographic. But
It's a different bar.
it's a different bar, and sometimes there is a bar, and they're funnier. Then I'm funnier, but
Who
yeah.
are your favorite comedians, and what were
Mm.
some of the books that you read that really
Mm.
influenced your comedy?
Yeah, I wish I was actually in the other office. But I read 10 or 12 books. One was Zen and the Art of Stand Up. There's a Mel Helitzer comedy toolkit book. There's this dude whose name starts with a G, who has a whole process he calls like joke mining, prospecting, and then like the setup versus the surprise, the punch, writing all those things, set up concepts, punch concepts. Like there's a ton of books. I just kind of read them all and tried different things. And everything I read in those books gave me an idea because I was brand new to comedy. So I was like, oh, what if I do that? What if I do that? What if I do that? You know? So I was doing jokes like based on like hand signals. Like I made a game called Duck Pickle Monkey that was kind of like almost, it was some stupid game. So I tried a lot of different crazy stuff, and then eventually settled down. But yeah. So that was what you asked about the books. What was the other question?
Yeah, people. Who are your favorite comedians that influence?
Oh gosh. I mean, the first one I always say is Brian Regan, who is not the most famous, but most comedians will tell you he's one of the best. Like his facial expressions, his act outs, super relatable guy, smart guy who plays dumb very well, which is difficult. Most people can't do it. Seinfeld, of course, and Chris Rock for their joke writing. I know that they're both a little controversial. Who's not? But they're disciplined with joke writing and technique and just doing it every day and doing a lot of it. It's funny too because Chris Rock will get up and try a joke. He won't put any emotion into it at all. He wants to know if just the words are funny. If not, he'll get rid of it, and then he'll start really acting it and really putting a lot into it. So they're like
Interesting. I
scientists.
never heard him talk about that. That's
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah. And Seinfeld, every time I listen to him talk about comedy, he says something awesome and insightful.
Did you
Who
read
else?
his book?
Seinfeld's book. He wrote a book on.
It's called Is This Anything?
I don't remember. I don't think I read that. No, I
Because
haven't.
that's the big phrase that comedians use,
Yeah.
right? They
Is
tell a
this
joke
anything?
and then, "Is this anything?"
Is there something there? Yeah. I did read Steve Martin's because he was very interesting. He was so successful he had to quit because people were laughing at things that weren't funny.
That's kind of sad that
It's the
that's
mob
the
psychology.
reason. Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, who determined that? How did he share that? Who
Because he would
determined?
he would do things he knew were not funny and say things he knew were not funny, and they were still laughing. Like they just thought it was another. So I don't know. He did it enough that for him, he just was like, this is weird. This is not, because he started with vaudeville. Like he was doing carnival type stand up in tents with a fake arrow over his head. Like he started with the
Yeah.
people who didn't even want to see comedy and made them laugh. And there he's in an audience, an arena where everyone's saying it's great. This probably has a larger lesson for all art, like people's opinion about it. It's so hard to tell the difference between when you think something is good and is it really good, and is it determined by you or by the audience or both, right? Anyway, got too deep there. Sorry.
No, I love that because right when you said it, I thought the same thing about another industry, even wine. So I'm not a big drinker, but you think about people that are drinking. Like I remember they took a group of like sommeliers and put them in a room and they gave them all these wines and but they switched
Oh, the
they
labels.
the labels so they knew how much each wine were and they actually shared that the wines that were more expensive were better, they were richer, bolder, and it was a lie.
That's crazy.
So it is interesting when you think about that. And even when I think about if you're reading something, writing comedy, because comedians, the way they talk about the process of joke writing, it's very similar, obviously, to writers and how they write. And you have to get everything out on the page and you have to see what works, what doesn't, and really what draws someone in. And it would be interesting if you gave two pieces of work, jokes or writing, and you told them it was, hey, this is Stephen Pressfield or
Yeah.
someone that's a very influential writer versus someone who maybe is up and coming, and how that would
Yeah. Yeah.
influence the way people read it.
And a similar thing is if you've seen the Big Bang Theory without the laugh track,
Oh,
it's not
no.
funny. And then as a comedians, like we watch stuff like that and we're like, that's not funny. Why do they have all these people laughing? You know what I mean? But it's the peer pressure conforming type thing, I guess, or whatever. I don't know what it is. Social proof, all that stuff.
So how do you, obviously above and beyond writing every day, getting up and telling the jokes, how do you take the feedback that you receive and your taste as well and
Hmm.
create the next set of jokes or the
Yeah,
next getting up there and sharing?
it's interesting because I mean I'm definitely not a write every day type of guy. Like today, I had some ideas. I don't have ideas every day, and I mean because I do, like I've been doing it for 18 years, so I have probably a good 30 to 40 minutes of stuff that's funny, that's proven, that's worked over and over and over again. So I can use that, and I could throw in a new thing at a gig, and if it doesn't work that well, whatever. Or I could say, well, that one AI wrote, so blame AI, or whatever I want to say about it, which is a whole other topic, by the way. Using AI to help you write jokes. But it's usually inspired for me because something will happen. I'll have an opinion, or have an emotion, or something, and you kind of have. I feel like I have an instinct kind of now that there might be something there. Is this anything? It might be something, but it's not. There were years where I was like, I'm going to write 5 jokes every day, and I did, but they weren't. A lot of them obviously weren't funny, and I was trying to push it. I was trying to force it. I've done it according to different methods. Tried to teach those methods to ChatGPT with mixed results. So the process is always different. It's kind of organic. But what I learned most overall, because I was so stand up comic in these keynote gigs, sometimes I was too funny, and people would laugh there. But then like at the end, they kind of didn't. It wasn't like they were like great speech or whatever. Want to shake my hand? When I started including more personal stories, which sometimes are funny, then it made more of a connection. And there are comedians that do that, but there's also comedians that just write joke after joke after joke. And you see some comedians, you're up there and they're like, that's not even true. They're just saying that because it's funny. So they're just constantly lying. It's like, oh, I fooled you. I fooled you again. Oh, it's like, Yeah, it's funny, but it doesn't necessarily have like a human impact on the heart, you know?
Yeah, and I think some comedians, they share a version of the truth, I guess. They might
Mm,
add some additional pieces in to make it funny.
mm.
So how do you use AI to write jokes? And do you and what are your thoughts when people talk, cuz that's a whole controversy. Should you use it to write or to generate ideas?
Yeah, I'm in the camp that like it's a tool that an artist can use. Um, I think there's a lot of the opinions that come from that. Like, I don't want to say that everybody that says you shouldn't use it at all is just old and grew up doing it a different way and they're attached that way. But that's kind of the way it looks to me. Like I would agree though with the critics that we don't want to create something that's 100% AI. Like, and the good thing with humor is it's usually not funny, so you have to do something with it. But like, if it can quickly, and what I found works the best is I'll give the AI a process. Like, here's what we want to do step by step. So I've created kind of a toolkit. It has the context for how you write a joke or a tag or a bit, a chunk, whatever. And then I say, let's start with this. Like, or I might ask it, I say, ask me for, like, I'll have it ask me questions, you know? Like, so it'll be like, oh, what happened recently to you that was emotional or whatever? Or what do you have a strong opinion about? Or we'll take topics and be like, let's talk about really emotional, provocative topics like love or like war or sex or whatever. And I can't use any sex stuff for my business stuff anyway, um, but then we start there and then I write something personal and then we try to make jokes out of it basically. So I see it as kind of like a writing partner that's not really funny. And the problem with LLMs like ChatGPT is they are built to approximate their understanding of reality and give you what is most likely, which unfortunately in humor is not funny. Like the most obvious thing is the least funny thing. So I still think there's a lot of work to do with making AI come up with more creative ideas. I've experimented with that too. And the best way I think to do that I've found so far is to use multiple agents. So you'll have come up with an idea, you have another one that criticizes it, you have another one that maybe does some internet research on it, and then another one that rewrites it, you know, and then what you get from that prompt is much more creative and interesting.
Do you have other than ChatGPT and,
Oh yeah.
AI, do you have other people that you collaborate with to
Yeah,
create
I
jokes?
do. I have a couple people that I've collaborated with for years. One of them, we don't always do it, but we have a standing Thursday meeting to talk about jokes or whatever. You know,
I love that.
yeah, yeah,
I feel like that's so important in the creative process. I just joined this writing community about 3 times a week. They have these open, you come, they share a writing prompt, and then you just write for 15, 20 minutes, and then people can share their work and you
yeah,
get feedback. And it's so fun because
yeah,
it does two things. One, you show up and you're writing and you're kind of forced to write, especially if you're procrastinating on stuff. And then you get to hear what people feel about your work, which is obviously really helpful. So I
hmm,
really love that you do that because I think it can be really hard, especially you're in such a silo. I've always heard, even with comedians, they say that it can be very lonely because you're writing a lot and you're getting up, even because you have to go and get up all the time and you're doing it alone
yeah,
night after night after night.
sure.
Are you
But I
still
mean,
doing it all the time? Like, how often do you go do an open mic?
you know, that's a whole other story. Like, I every few years I'll go do open mic locally for 6 to 9 months. You know, but I haven't done it in quite a while, not since before the pandemic. I've been thinking about going back recently, or yeah, because we have an actual comedy club in Charleston now. It has a couple open mics a week. But what sucks about open mics is that they are basically a bunch of other comedians writing new jokes who probably are not successful enough to be on the road yet, right? Or there may be sometimes people come from out of town and go to an open mic or whatever. But often, you know, so you got 6 or 8 people, you don't have a full audience, and they're all comedians who are thinking about themselves and their jokes and possibly are jealous of you. So it's not a great feedback environment. That's why I have this other AI project I'm working on where I want to like use deep learning to eventually teach a model what is funny in stand up, by basically analyzing a bunch of stand up videos, wave files, and then this is so Asperger's of me. Like, which I'm not. I say I'm Slightsburgers, but and socially anxious and socially phobic, and incidentally, which is why I was okay being up on stage because I always thought people were looking at me anyway. But now I actually can talk to them, So that's why stand up worked for me. But this is such a like socially anxious comedian thing to do. Who's a geek is to I want to build an AI that will be my open mic so that I can just tell it my routines and it'll go like based on everything that I've seen from stand up, that's probably funny. And then I'll go try it in my keynotes, with a real audience of hundreds of people.
So are
That's
you
my
doing the comedy more to get better at your keynotes, or would you want to at some point build that kind of brand as a comedian and
Yeah,
tour and
I wouldn't mind. Hey, if I could be Jim Gaffigan or somebody like that, I'd do it in a second. I mean, the thing is that what's interesting is like my style would definitely be not just comedy. It would have to, and I'm not saying these guys don't do this, but it would have to be more from the heart. Like I'm not just up there to be a clown. Like I also want you to have a better life. That's why I like kind of doing the business stuff is I get to give people value and takeaways and like here's how you can do this better, but it also you're learning and you're laughing and learning the whole time. So there's probably not really an ideal environment for me. It'd be like a funny like a Tony Robbins, Jerry Seinfeld or something, you know.
Tony Robbins, Jerry Seinfeld mix.
Yeah.
So you have a lot of creative interests. A lot of us are very multi-passionate. We work like we have businesses, we're working, we want to write books, start podcasts, YouTube channels, stand up, pottery, art, all the things. And I feel like you have your hands in so many things. And oftentimes, especially, I mean, when I'm talking to some of our clients, what's the biggest reason people don't? I don't have time. I don't have time. Or they feel like they aren't ready, they're not prepared, I don't have the right camera, I don't have the right equipment, I don't feel ready. So how and you're such a I have this idea and now I'm going to go all in, read all the books, get up on stage. I mean, you really threw yourself into comedy and I've seen you do that in the other work that you've done. Even the project you and I worked on, we were like, "Hey, let's start this show every week." And like the next week we were doing the show. And that's
Yeah.
just how you roll.
Yeah.
So for someone that's listening thinking, I have all these creative ideas and I haven't gotten started, how can someone kind of put themselves in that place of I'm going to go all in and just
Yeah.
focus and start?
Well, I think number one, I don't know if everybody is like that. Like I was diagnosed this year with ADD, which makes a lot of sense. Not everybody can or wants to do that level of sustained focus. Okay. So I don't want to like assume everybody can do that or have them feel bad if they can't. That might not be their way. But I also think my advantage right now is I've done this repeatedly in multiple different things, right? So I've done it with I did it with the Google ads, I did it with comedy, I did it with keynote speaking, I've done it with art to some degree. I just did my first musical. And so my attitude is like, if they can do it, why can't I? And don't tell me I can't do it. And the most important thing I think, not only it's not just finding something you're interested in, but it's also believing in yourself. So you've got to get rid of all the voices in your head of people that said stuff to you, or you're imagining they're gonna say stuff to you. Basically, I mean, I'm not gonna swear, but you have to tell those people to F off. Okay. Like F you, I can do this. So if you don't believe in yourself, and I mean, at the same time you're believing in yourself, you can doubt whether it'll be any good. You can realize you don't have the talents or the skills yet, but you're not going to get them unless you do it. Like to do this musical thing. So I've been a musician my whole life, and it's basically been a failure because I never committed to it. I didn't go on the road. I didn't form a band and play for 20 years. I was unrealistic and I wasn't willing to commit for whatever reason. But I've played around with it from time to time. I've got Ableton and I've made music with it, and which is like Logic's. And I said, well, I'm just going to make like a couple years ago, I'm like, I'm going to make an album or an album's worth of songs. So I put 12 songs. They're out on Spotify under the name Buck Thunder. Um, and they're
Where did you get that name?
okay. So when I was in college, I went to a weird college and we had Native Americans come in. The Lakotas did a sweat lodge for us. And they also did this little journey to discover your spirit animal. And mine was a buck on a hill with lightning coming down. So I was like, Buck Thunder. Um,
I love it.
because Brian Carter's boring. Who wants your artist? The artist Brian Carter, like the musician Brian Carter. That sounds stupid. Sounds like an Irish band that plays in a coffee house. Anyway, so I had put that stuff out, but in order to do better with that, I'd started getting vocal lessons. So I found this guy he's an opera trained guy, right? And he taught me all these techniques were freaking amazing. And I found out a lot of people are singing wrong. And people don't want to hear that. But there's a lot of misinformation about. So anyway, I became better at singing. Then I got the opportunity to do this musical. Then I started taking lessons twice a week, right? Practice my what off because I want to do the best job I can. I don't want to be embarrassed. I don't know what that tells you. Just like pursue the stuff that you're interested in. Like I want to have the experience. Like, what's it like to be that guy up there on stage? What's it like to get all those laughs? What's it like to be able to sing like that and have the full human experience? Well, I've only experienced administratively assisting and watching Netflix, and I also like to throw lawn darts. That's my life. Okay, if you're happy with that, but what if you wanted to like hang glide? What if you wanted to create your own clothing line? Why can't you do it? People might think you're stupid. You might fail, but if you think it would be fun, do it.
Yeah. And it's the journey. I love that you put in the work is what you do. You say, I want to be a musician. What does that mean? I'm going to start and then realize, hey, I probably need some help to get better at this. You reach out to someone, you get the help, you get the support. I feel like a lot of people, they're not committed to doing it.
Oh
Right. Of
yeah,
course, everybody wants to have the successful business and the best-selling book and be out on tour and be a musician. Not everyone is willing to do the work,
right.
which leads me to this beautiful post that you shared on Instagram. And I
Oh
loved it.
yeah,
I actually had to ask Brian, I was like, did you write this or was this something that you took? And it's a hard lesson to learn. There are no shortcuts to growing, getting better, or becoming more. There are dependencies, tools, devices, groups that can easily increase your capabilities, but they are not essentially you. Everything that improves you is hard. Learn to enjoy doing difficult things. Learn to enjoy the fatigue that comes from hard work.
yeah, yeah. That's
Drop the
tough.
mic.
Yeah, I'll tell you why that's tough is because look, the context is we live in a first world society where despite how rich you are compared to Elon Musk, you are richer than almost everybody that lived on this planet before. You have it way easier. The fact that we can't work out for an hour a day when people were basically working out to live or to work for tens of thousands of years, maybe a couple 100,000 years, that was just what they did every day. You could do that, but you're lazy. Why? Because you're not used to it and you don't have to do it, right? But what that means is that you are weak, not just physically, but willpower weak. You have to, and the only way this comes from David Goggins, and he was talking to Andrew Huberman about this. And there's neurological basis for this. Willpower is a muscle. The ability to do something you don't want to do to get something you want, it's the doing the hard stuff. It's a muscle, and most people completely atrophied, right? So do something that's hard, and really having a personal trainer is a big part of that for me. Every time I work out, it's hard, and I realized, oh, that's the way it's supposed to be. If it was easier this time, it'd mean I wasn't going to grow. I'm not. I'm not going to get any better, right? It has to be hard every time. So, no, it's not easy to write stand up. It's not easy to do art all the time. Yeah, if you want to do it front, I used to do it for fun. I'd be like, hey, I'm gonna drink some wine and do art. Yeah, it's fun. So that's a way to relax from work, but that's not a way to get better, right? I was so weak when I was a kid, like I couldn't practice scales. I'm like, well, I'll learn a bit of this Jimi Hendrix song, and that's the one chord I'll know for like 10 years. That's not doing hard things and getting better. So no matter how good we get using AI and all this other stuff, if you aren't fundamentally good at being creative because you try to be creative all the time, your stuff is going to suck. It's going to be as uncreative as AI is.
So how do you decide what is successful and what's not successful with your creative projects?
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, I think the best answer I've come up with for that is, did I do the best I could with it and am I proud of it?
Mm.
Because it's a dead end full of depression to judge success by what other people think about it. And if let's say you're eventually going to be Picasso, for the first couple years, you're going to suck. People are not going to react to you like that. You like you're Picasso, so you'll think you're in the wrong field. Well, you're not. You just started working out on art. So that's my answer. Like with this musical, I can already see stuff I could have done better already. But what an accomplishment. I sung 2 lead songs to, hundreds of people. It was just a 5-run show, but I got through it. I learned all my lines. I dealt with the frustration of being directed and all that crap. That's an accomplishment, right? So you have to, it's cliche. You have to celebrate your accomplishments, but you really do. Cause for a long time, I was driven to prove something to people and then I achieve things. And even now people are like, wow, you sound great. I'm like, I can't hear it. Why can't I hear it? Why can't I hear that? And this is another thing I heard from somebody smart. You always have imposter syndrome when you get better because you still don't think you're that person. It takes your identity a while to catch up. Am I funny? Yeah. Did I think I was funny 10 years in? No, I didn't think I was funny. Even 5 years ago, I didn't think I was funny. I have all kinds of proof that I'm funny.
You have high standards. Like you have high standards for yourself and you have good taste. It's like that reminds me of Ira Glass's The Taste Gap. And I
Mm,
feel like as you get better and as you
yeah.
grow, that gap, it kind of shortens because, you improve and you improve. But I still feel like people will have the taste gap. I mean, I love talking to writers and creators because I don't know an author that I've met that hasn't said to me, I reread the book I wrote last year and I would have changed this about it. I
Right.
would have written in this because you learn and you grow. So as long as you're learning and growing and you want to improve,
Yeah.
that is huge. And you have to be on the lookout for those opportunities. That's why I love people like you because like you, I'm always okay, what is out there? What writing workshops can I go to? Who can I reach out to? How can I collaborate with people that are better than me? How can I, learn and grow and get better? That's why I love reading books because you went and you read a bunch of comedy books. When I started writing my book, I picked up a whole bunch of books about writing and became
Hmm.
fascinated with the writing process and what that looked like. And I think one of the reasons why I loved learning about writing so much is because it's the creative process in general for everything.
Mm.
So everything is the writing process. It's like you have to show up, you have to do the work, you have to put things out and share it with the world and get feedback. And it can be really challenging for 2 reasons. One, you either get a lot of critics
Hmm.
that you don't want to hear, or 2, you get crickets and you don't really
Right.
get a lot of feedback. So it's
Critics are
like
crickets. That's
it's
funny.
both. It could be both
Yeah.
sides of it. And you have to be
Yeah.
confident enough in your work to keep putting things out and knowing. But I love that you said that one of your markers is that you're proud of it. I think that's
Yeah.
really important for people to hear.
I think there's an important note. If I understand, define the taste gap for me real quick.
Oh, basically, the taste gap, he says, you know what good taste is. You know what it looks like and you
Hmm.
want to create it, but you don't yet have the skill set to actually be as good as what you envision being.
Yeah. And I think you almost never will. Um,
Right.
and you might raise your standards, like you said. So like the thing is that, and I've seen that when that rings true because I see the people who are not good at things, a number of them think they did great. And then you got people who are really great. They put out great stuff and they're like, yeah, you know, about their own stuff. But I think there's a happy medium because I think the extreme end of that, and I see that in some stand-up comics particularly, because there can be a lot of depression in that field. You're never enjoying it and you're never feeling good about yourself. I just don't think that's healthy. I think you have to have a healthy amount of self-criticism, and you have to have like standards you're always trying to raise and reach, but you also have to enjoy doing it and give yourself a little credit. Like here's one thing I learned during my midlife crisis, which I hopefully am through. We'll see. Um,
There might be another one on the way.
who knows? Well, I had quarter life crisis before that was a thing, so whatever. Someone tries to give you love, you can only feel as much of it as you love yourself. The rest you're going to deny. And so when someone says what you created was good, you want to be able to feel some of that, right? Maybe don't say, oh, yeah, it was great. It's the best. It's the best. I couldn't have done better. And I'll never, yeah, it's amazing. Everything you do is amazing. That's just another kind of personality disorder. But you want to be able to accept, like, oh, yeah, I kind of did sing good. There are some points where I was like, yeah, is that my voice? That's pretty cool, you know? But there also, I missed some things. I screwed up a word or whatever.
Yeah, you're constantly getting better, but I think that it is an important point to allow yourself to have fun. In fact, I have asked quite a few very successful business owners, authors, speakers, what advice would you give to your younger self? And you want to know, 9 out of 10 of them have said, I wish I would have had more fun during the process. Like, I
Hmm.
wish I would have allowed myself to enjoy all of that time. It's kind of like when you talk to someone who did a startup and they're extraordinarily successful and they have thousands of employees and they're millions or billions of dollars, and they say, man, remember how fun it was in the garage when we were just a
Yeah.
team of 5, we're putting things
Yeah.
together and we're up until 2 in the morning. And it kind of goes back to that. And at that time, they were just thinking, I just want to be that $1 million plus company. And then they're like, wait a second, it was really fun. So to enjoy
Yeah.
the journey all along the way and be able to have that aspirational, this is what I want to create, this is who I really want to be, but then to really enjoy getting there. I feel like that also plays into the confidence that you have to have, like you were talking about, in order to actually put work out into the world. Because
Yeah.
Brian, you share a lot of stuff, and some of the videos you share, I just am like, I love this for so many reasons. One of them is simply the fact that you guys created this and put it out into the world.
Here's when, like, I filmed myself putting sourdough hard pretzels in the blender the other night for no reason. Like, I just thought, can I blend this? Let's blend it. It's like, and the only reaction I got was like, what? And that was what I was going for. Like, why are you doing this? But anyway, the thing I would say to my younger self is be more supportive of yourself. And then maybe you would do allow yourself to have fun, right? But sometimes you have to give yourself the stuff you didn't get.
I love that.
Oh, I got you all teared up.
That's so sweet. I feel like people really need to hear that. People are
Yeah,
really hard on themselves.
some people. I mean, everything you do has to balance out who you actually are, right? So if you're someone that always indulges yourself, that's not for you, right?
Right.
If you are hard on yourself, give yourself something you never had before. But if you're indulging yourself, get the freaking work.
Right? No, the again, the listeners of this show need to hear everything that you're saying,
Mhm.
because we're creators. And some of us put a lot of stuff out into the world, and some of us have journals and notebooks of ideas and projects that we want to put out into the world but haven't yet for a number of different reasons. And I think people have a lot of creativity inside of them, and they are afraid to share it. They're afraid to put it out into the
Mhm.
world for a number of reasons, which is why
Yeah.
you're so inspiring. And you just do go for it, and you do a lot of creative projects.
Here's yeah. I I get that. I had that problem for a while. Actually, I had a problem where I thought everything I did was great and I put it all out there. And then I had a problem of like, oh, nothing's good enough. I can't put it out there. And then I realized
It's all or
like
nothing with Brian.
I'm trying to find happy mediums. Here's one. Like you're cheating the world if you don't show them what you've been working on, what you have, right? It's not just for you. And flip side of that is you're not doing it for approval. You're not doing it. You're not going to give them the power to tell you whether you do it or not. Because you're doing it for you, but it might help them, right? So you put it out there, and that could be something good for other people. You could get crickets. It doesn't matter. You're putting it out there. That's just part of the process. You put it out there. Maybe you get something out of that criticism or approval, whatever it is. But you have, now I feel like the Tony Robbins part of things. You have to approve of yourself. You have to do it for yourself. It's not selfish. It's that if I did this for so long, if you're doing it for approval, you are not going to create you. You're not going to create something from you. You're going to create something that's your imagination of what they want, which nobody wants. That's nothing. That's nothing. You're the one Kate Volman that's ever existed. So give us the Kate Volman stuff. I'm going to make her cry before the end of this episode. I'm going to make her cry.
All right, Brian, I always ask our guests what's one activity people can do in 10 minutes or less to spark their creativity?
Oh, here it is. Be bored. This is scientifically proven. And that's why when you're like painting a wall, you have all these different ideas, right? So I'm not saying watch paint dry. Maybe just paint. Like, no, I mean like not painting a pic. You know, you're trying to be creative, then you're not. So that's why meditation, it's hard to stop thinking. Your brain's like, what do I do? You know, if you want stimulation, you need to have a lack of stimulation. If you want this internal stimulation to happen, yeah, it's proof. Look it up. There's research on this.
No, I have heard that, which is why meditation works, which is why walking without I started walking without my headphones, listening to a podcast, reading or an audiobook or music or anything, because I did find that, oh wow, I have really good ideas when I'm just out walking, not consuming all of this information.
Yes. Give yourself some space. I did a dark retreat, and I'm going to do another one that's longer. And oh my God, I had like 38 hours of voice dictation. That is too much because I was like kind of freaking out. So this time I'm going to try and settle down. But yeah, you talk about, and they're not all good ideas at all. But one of them was, I'll give you the last one that I'll give you here is the most powerful thing we can do for the world is to love someone who is completely different from us. Third time now.
I love that too. So many little sound bites here.
Yeah, that's what a midlife crisis will do for you.
Oh my gosh. Brian, you are awesome. We're going to have you come back on because we didn't even dig into all of the things that you do, but I think it really is interesting chatting with you about the creative process because you do it in so many different areas and it's really helpful. So thank you so much for taking some time to chat.
Thanks for having me. It's fun to talk about it.
And there you have it. I told you we got into all the things regarding the creative process, what that looks like, what it feels like, what we need to do to get through it. So I hope that you got something out of this episode. And I also hope that you take advantage of that 10-minute activity of being bored. Go be bored. Turn off your phone, your TV, go outside and just sit. Just sit and soak in the silence and allow yourself to be bored for even if just 10 minutes and see what ideas start popping up. You never know. You never know what's going to show up. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I enjoyed talking to Brian. And if you are interested in learning a little bit more about Brian, you can go to keynotespeakerbrian.com. And you can also go follow him on Instagram at Brian Carter. He also has another account that is linked on his account that is more showcasing his art. So we didn't really even get into his art, but that's for another show. But you can go check him out over on Instagram, and I'll put the links in the description for you to find. All right. You are awesome. Thank you so much for listening. And until next time, go create something.